from San Diego.
Hey guys, how you guys doing? Good. So yeah, Chris said I'm from Restored Uptown in San Diego and North Park in San Diego. I've got two members of my team with me. I've got Joseph Yasa right here. If you want to raise your hand there like you just don't care. Come on, a little higher, a little higher. And Joseph is our kids ministry director, and actually we don't pay him, which could be a problem in a lot of situations. But Joseph actually has a more than a full-time job, and he works remotely, and he's chosen to give himself to probably 10 hours a week working as a volunteer. He's at our staff meeting every week. Amazing guy who loves people so much and has committed himself to learning to follow Jesus and learning to love people like Jesus. His wife Tara's not here. She's about to have her third child. So they're busy, but they've said, man, Jesus, you're worth it. A lot of people will pull back, and they've been exemplary in our community that they bring their kids in. Chris talks about this a lot, that you guys will start having kids at some point, but to bring the kids with you, not to leave them behind. Yeah, I mean, you guys are all, there's a lot of Gen Z in the house. Look, we got a lot of kids here, no offense. But I was like, man, it's so funny. My church is like the millennial church whenever I hang out with older pastors. And here I feel like I'm an elder statesman with you guys. It's kind of funny. And then we got Julia, who's a Biola alumni, guys. Come on, look out. Orange County royalty. So she's kind of like our Sam. I don't know where Sam is. Exactly. She's working. That's what she's doing. It's kind of Julia in our gatherings and helping create spaces for people to encounter Jesus. And so honestly, so grateful to have both of them with me. I think they both have a calling that's still being defined and fleshed out, but so excited that they're with us for the time that they're with us. Again, Chris, can I hold the mic? Is that cool? Yeah. Is that all right? Okay. It's a comfort thing. Yeah. All right, I'm just going to pray and we'll dive in. Father, thank you for this evening. I thank you for that call to worship, thinking about your heart as a father. And I think it is something that honestly feels like it's too good to believe that the King of the universe loves us, that he doesn't just love us, he likes us, that he delights in us, that he knit us together in our mother's womb, and that though there are unplanned parents, there are no unplanned children. That you intentionally handcrafted every single person in this room. You love them more than they love themselves. And they really were fearfully and wonderfully made. And so, Lord, I pray that love would overwhelm us, Jesus. That love of the Father that you came to reveal to us, and that we could then love others as you have loved us. In Jesus' name, amen. So I'm just going to dive in. My passion, I love planning churches. I love talking about Jesus. I think the church is known for a lot of things, and oftentimes it's not Jesus, which is crazy. And tonight I want to talk about something that the church should be known for. It's the church's calling, and really it's your calling, okay? Now imagine if I were to walk up to you on the street, and I just go, hey man, I know your calling. Or I would walk up to you right now on the street might be a little creepier. I would walk up to you and just say, hey, I know your calling. You'd be like, man, I'm interested, right? Or, this guy's crazy, but if you might know. And if you knew I could know, you'd probably lean in. You'd probably want to know. You'd probably want to listen. And I believe that I know the calling of every single person in this room. And the cool thing about it is, if you're a follower of Jesus, it can be done in any job. It can be done if you are single. It can be done if you are married. It can be done if you are widowed or divorced. It can be done if you are rich or poor or black or brown or white or young or old or Republican or Democrat or hipster or bro. You can do this. It doesn't matter what job. And so to look at that calling, we'll look at John chapter 13. I want you to see this fundamental calling that all of us have. And if we lived it out, I think it would change everything. John chapter 13. And again, this is a passage of Scripture. John 13-17 are Jesus' last words to his disciples. He's getting ready to go to the cross. It's the Upper Room Discourse. We guys took a New Testament class at Vanguard. And typically, again, the last words tend to be weightier words. I remember, and again, last words tend to be weightier than first words. I remember the first words I ever uttered to my now wife, Jackie. And I wrote her a note in math class, and I just said, do you understand this stuff? Question mark, exclamation point, question mark. It's back in the day. We couldn't text, okay? Back in the day. I'm feeling real dated. I sent it to her, and I didn't care if she understood math. I'm going to be real with you guys right now, okay? I want to know, are you into me? Or do you understand the chemistry I'm feeling towards you? And, right, so those are first words, right? Now we're married, 15 years, it's amazing. Probably my last words to her, if I knew they were my last words to her, would be significantly weightier than my first words to her. And as you read John 13-17, you get to see Jesus, again, the things he is saying, he's about to go, they're probably pretty weighty. And the cool thing is we're still his disciples, still called to the same things. And so I want to see what he says. So again, it should be of significance. This is the last thing I want to leave you with. And this is what he says. John 13:33 says, "Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me. And just as I said to the Jewish leaders, now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come." Again, I'm about to go. And I love you, little children. He says this, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." It says, by this, all men and women. So how will they know we're his disciples? And it's interesting when you look at church culture and you look at what Jesus says. I go to a lot of church conferences. I've even spoke at some of them. Some are flashy, some are small, some are whatever. Oftentimes, there's a lot of conversation about a lot of things that the church does, and no one ever does sessions on how to love. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. We just assume people know how to love. People don't even know how to receive love. Never mind give love. I spent a lot of my life trying to learn how to receive, and I'm still learning how to receive the Father's love. As, was it Henrietta? Was up here earlier? Is that Afrikaan's name? Okay, yeah, I got no shot. But what she was sharing, man, I'm still wrestling to fully receive. And so many of my church wrestles, man, we have to be able to receive love, to give love. And again, he says, this is how they'll know it. It's going to be your dope building, your worship bands, the quality of your coffee, your branding, even your Instagram, your amazing kids ministry. He says the way they're going to know you is by your love for one another. And what I found is that this is actually true. It's so simple, but it is not. It's like simple, but it's not easy. But it's like everything. You know what I mean? Like it's like chopping wood. It's not complicated, but it's really hard. And it's everything. Like it really is. It's everything. There's a guy named Tertullian. He led a church that St. Augustine's mother, Monica, went to in a place called Carthage. Carthage is modern-day Tunis, Tunisia, where you just sent those missionaries, which is crazy. We got to walk around the land where the church was, where likely Monica prayed for her son who was wilding out and going crazy. And he was, if you know his story, it's crazy, gnarly sexual sin, gnarly addiction, a lot going on. But he was a guy, he really helped us develop the doctrine of the Trinity. And he said this, he defended the gospel from the attacks of the pagans. Sorry, what I was going to say is he was a brilliant man. Goes down as one of the greatest intellectuals in church history to this day, really defended the gospel. And he's a guy who loves philosophical, theological arguments. He knew Latin and Greek, and he translated the scriptures. If anyone would go, man, if we just got good logic, people are going to listen. He said this, "It is mainly the deeds of a love so noble that lead many to put a brand upon us." And he led the church when it was wildly persecuted. "See," they say, "how they love one another, how they are ready even to die for one another." How would the people in your relational network on the outside of these walls be impacted if they looked at Genesis and Costa Mesa and said, "See how they love one another"? They lay down their life. And that's not like a weird cult. We're all going to die. But we would if we had to. You know what I mean? Honestly, when I walk through life with the people I do life with, I really would die for them. I love them. And so important. I think people really would take notice. They can get better. This was great. Tyler, this is better music than pretty much we ever have on a Sunday. Just on a worship team, I'm not being mean. You guys are really talented. You're gifted. You're blessed. There is better music always at whatever amphitheater you have, anytime, any real bands in town. I don't care how good your coffee is. There's better coffee out there. I don't care how amazing your kids' ministry is. Jackie, my wife saw this. This is pretty funny. She saw a really old school church, and it said free childcare available at both services. She's like, dude, we could have been charging this whole time. There's better childcare out there. There's better schools. There's better experiences. There's better stuff to do on Sundays. Some point, you guys probably will end up meeting Sunday morning. Who knows? Maybe not, but maybe you will in 10 years' time. Brunch will always look better than the Lord's table, if we're honest. And so what's the thing that's going to draw people in again? I think it has to be love. And so here's the deal. What is love, okay? In common Greek, there were 3 words for love, okay? The first word described romantic love. It's the word eros, where we get the word erotic. I know, sexy stuff, relax. Eros, so there is erotic love. The second described brotherly love. It's phileo. That's why Philadelphia is known as the city of brotherly love, which doesn't make sense if you've ever been there. It's pretty intense, but Joseph used to live there, yeah. But for some reason, at some point, people thought this was a city of brotherly love. Phileo. And then there's the third Greek word for love, and it's the one Jesus is calling his disciples to here, and it's the word agape love. It's the kind of love Jesus is referring to. Now, what I want to talk about for a second is what agape love isn't, because we don't know what love is, if we're honest. People use that word all the time. If you jump on social media, people will be saying they love all sorts of things. We just had the Emmys, right? Man, I love that person's performance in that one show. Man, this new taco spot, I love it, right? Oh, my new shoes, I love them. These are newer, I do love them, but you know. It's a great, it's new beer. I'm from San Diego. It's new beer. I love this new beer. Bro, they're mostly the same. I think they just changed the names. One of these beers. It's amazing beer, but I think it's basically the same thing over and over again. I love my friend. I love my spouse. I love my kids. I love Jesus. What does this word mean? Because you can't feel the same way about all those things and be okay. So we say we love all kinds of things, but what does love even mean? Okay, so I want to talk about, my first point is what love isn't. Okay, I'm going to talk about what love is, what love isn't, what love is, and how we move into love. Love isn't a feeling, okay? Now, don't hear me wrong. Love isn't a feeling. Love, you should have feeling tied to the thing you love, but that's not all it is, okay? When many of us say I love you, we mean, I love the way you make me feel, if we're honest. One counselor put it this way, he said, imagine a woman who has a dream of what her life looks like, with career goals, financial goals, beauty goals. She realizes it's time to get married, so she starts dating and finds someone that fits her dream for her life. She weighs his financials, his looks, and his family. Then she decides that she loves him. Again, she's attracted to the man because she loves herself. She loves that this man is going to complete her dream for herself. This is not actually love. It may be attraction. It may be powerful romance. It might result in fun together, but it is not love. It's mostly you're helping me complete the dream for my life. Which, if we're being honest, if we're being pretty brutal, pretty thug life, she's using him. She's not loving him. What if this guy gets sick, gets old, he will, loses wealth, sins against her? Will her love hold up? And so often falling out of love is code for they don't make me feel the same way anymore. Ever heard that? Man, we're not in love anymore. Well, what do you mean? They'll just tell you, I just don't feel the same way. Oh, so you know them. So it's different. Love, this is super important, this next one, because our culture just really botches this. And if we're honest, it's ridiculous. Love is not unconditional affirmation and acceptance of someone's choices. Everyone believes this. And if you really dig into it, it's ridiculous. And we know this in so many areas of our life, if we're honest. How does our world define love right now? Again, unconditional acceptance and affirmation of whatever you want to do, be, say, or think. Unless you suggest that someone is wrong, then it's always hate speech. There is a such thing as hate speech, by the way, and it's awful, and it's real racism, real misogyny, all that stuff. But it's not, I disagree with you. Because if love is unconditional acceptance and affirmation of what someone does, again, then anyone who says you're wrong hates you. I have a friend of mine right now who is walking with a guy who he thought was his friend, who is leaving his wife and his family for a woman he works with, basically. And he said, man, and he literally said, I wish people could understand me and support me. His wife's done nothing wrong. I mean, she's not perfect, but like what he's doing is totally wrong. He's going to ruin his kids' lives. At least ruin's too strong. He's going to make their life very hard. He's going to ruin their family for sure, and he will regret it. Anyone that's been down that road does look back and regrets it. He's got these beautiful kids, wants to move to another city. He wants someone to say, follow your heart, way to go. I'm not going to do a show of hands, but if your parents experienced adultery, you know it's not loving at all. And to accept that would be crazy. If someone has an addiction or they're in an unhealthy, codependent, maybe even abusive relationship, We don't go, I'm not going to speak up, right? I disagree, I worry about you, but I'm not going to tell you. That's hatred, not love. And again, here's the crazy thing. Jesus had no problem telling people, you are wrong and I love you at the same time. Passage you guys are probably familiar with, John chapter 3. Look at it real quick. John 3, 16 to 18. I don't have it. Sorry, I'm wondering, is there another stand I could use? I'm just my Bible, just trying to make it work. Yeah, anything, just put my Bible on. Probably work. That'd be amazing if there's anything. So I don't want to be a diva. Thank you for loving me. Thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's good. Sorry, I thought the scripture was in my notes. John 3:16 to 18, it says, and we're used to this part, right? For God so loved the world. And again, Jesus is talking to this Pharisee, Nicodemus, in the cover of night. Nicodemus is ashamed to admit he's even intrigued by Jesus. We have friends like that. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you're like, I don't want people to know I'm here right now. They're singing, their hands are up. It's a little weird. Nicodemus is that guy. He's like, man, I'm interested in Jesus, but like my street cred would take a big hit. I'm known for, teaching one thing, but I can't not help but be so intrigued by him. He'd end up helping bury Jesus later on in the Gospels. But John 3:16 to 18, Jesus says this. He says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Is that not a radical description of love? Amazing. Verse 18, whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. Right, John 3:16, right, you want that on your bumper sticker. John 3:18, a little awkward. But Jesus, He's the one, he's talking about himself. He's going to die. You can't say he hates the world because he's dying for her. But he's willing to say the world's wrong and the world needs me. Again, some of you guys believe, and I see this all the time with people my age and people younger again, it's like if someone tells you you're wrong, man, they're haters. You actually hear that advice a lot. You know what you do? Cut people out of your life who are negative. Cut people out of your life who are toxic, abusive, all that good stuff. Chris and Meryl can talk to you about that if you're curious. Who's that? But someone who just says, hey, I think you might be wrong, probably they might be a hater. Haters usually just gossip and they're mean and they're jealous. But like someone who's actually worried about you, right? Do you know how awkward it is for most people to sit down and say, I'm worried about you? How many guys by chance have ever done this? You sat with someone and looked them in the eyes and said, I'm worried about you. I love you, right? Okay, less than half of us, right? Why? Because probably the millennial nightmare and the Gen Z nightmare too, you guys hide behind your screens, awkwardness, right? That's what if it's awkward? This is awkward. Oh my gosh, this is awkward, right? Peak awkwardness is looking at someone in the face saying, hey dude, I think that's an awful choice. I love you, but like dude, I'm so worried about you. You know how awkward it is to say, this thing I see in your life, I think it's pulling you away from Jesus. It seems like it isn't healthy for you. Like straight up, I love you. I am not better than you. I am prone to the same thing. We come humbly, but we go, but I'm worried about you. I'm worried about your heart. I'm worried about your soul. I'm worried about your trajectory. I love you. Yeah. To step into that awkwardness, what's the motive other than they love you? So love isn't unconditional affirmation of choices. It also love isn't attraction, all right? Now, I know we're like physical, right? They're sexy, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. Love isn't, I don't know if you've ever met someone and 3 minutes in, you're like, I love this guy. You ever said that? I do that all the time, man. I get pumped. I'm an enthusiast. I hate stuff. I love stuff. Like, I'm an overstater. Best nachos of all time. I'm like, well, that I can remember lately, if I'm honest. My wife's always like, best of all. I'm like, yeah, it's probably too far. Too strong, right? But, a lot of times I'll say this. I'm like, dude, I love that guy. And what I meant was, I liked that guy. He had an attractive personality. And by attractive personality is, he liked the same stuff as me. He was funnier, but he liked the same stuff. I like how he made me feel, right? I love me some me, and he reminds me of me. I love this. I like this guy, right? Every romantic comedy, right? 500 Days of Summer, they're in the elevator, and he's like, are you listening to the Smiths right now? She's like, yeah. Or vice versa. He's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I love you. She's like, oh, same band, love you. That's not love, okay? You're attracted to them. It's not bad to be attracted to anybody, or even attracted to someone's personality, but that's not love. Second point is this, what love is. John 13:34, he says, as I have loved you, love one another. The cross shapes what love is. The life and death and resurrection of Jesus, that shapes what love is. I'm going to read a definition by a counselor that I think is really helpful. He's a theologian and counselor, really, really helpful. I'm going to refer back to it as we work through what love is, okay? So I'm just going to read this sentence. It's long, but we're going to keep working through it. He says this. He says, love is willing self-sacrifice to be agape love. Love is willing self-sacrifice for the good of another that does not require reciprocation or that the person being loved is deserving. Love is willing self-sacrifice for the good of another that does not require reciprocation or that the person being loved is deserving. Now I want to break down this definition. The first fact is love is willing. Really, really important. It's willing. John 10, verses 17 to 18, Jesus says this. He says, "For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me." You might have heard this charge, the cross is cosmic child abuse, or it's wrong. No, Jesus laid down his life. It wasn't taken from him. So important. He's not this weak baby like, I wish. Because I'm choosing to lay my life down because I love you. Verse 18, "No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from the Father." This is why real love can't be misconstrued as abuse, because true love is a choice. The loving person is making a choice. They're not being coerced or manipulated. If you're being coerced or manipulated, it's not love. It's really important. Second, love is willing self-sacrifice. Not just willing, it's self-sacrifice. John 15:13, Jesus says, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends." There's no such thing as love without sacrifice. You might not believe me, but it's true. As a parent, if I don't sacrifice for those kids, I can't love them. As a husband, as a friend, in your singleness and life in the body of Christ, any friendship worth anything, what makes it worth anything is that you're willing to sacrifice for one another. It means plane trips taken, money spent, being emotionally vulnerable, practically serving. It can mean being silent when we want to speak, or speaking up when we want to be silent. It can mean doing when you want to rest. It can mean resting when you want to do. In my marriage, it can mean letting my spouse pick where to go on date night. Or actually, it can mean letting your spouse pick where to go on date night. Or in my marriage, it's picking where to go on date night because my spouse is crippled with decision anxiety, right? The millennial chronic disease. Which one? They're all so good. For an extrovert, right, it could be being quiet. If you're an introvert, it could be speaking up. It could be cleaning something up you don't want to clean up. It could be a lot of things. So love is willing self-sacrifice. But it's also, keep going, love is willing self-sacrifice for the good of another. It's entering someone else's world. It's listening and looking. It's feeling, and then it's acting for the good of someone else. Because self-sacrifice can still be for you. Right now, I'm in the middle of a weight loss challenge. 20 pounds. The winner gets a $200 gift card to the nicest steakhouse in San Diego. I lost 5 pounds last week. I'm not doing anything crazy. Exercise and diet. We have to eat all our meals each day. It's healthy. I'm sacrificing for me, just to be clear, okay? Self-sacrifice for the good of me. So it has to be for the good of another, right? Losing weight, saving money. They can be good for you, but that's not necessarily love. It's self-sacrifice for the good of another. The entire gospel story is one of self-sacrifices. It climaxes in the cross and resurrection, but the entire time Jesus is on this earth, he is sacrificing. He empties himself of divine power. He becomes a baby to nurse on a teen mom's breast. The one who created the world by his word becomes unable to utter a word, just coo. Then he sacrificially bears with people, including his stupid, selfish disciples. All the pain he feels, the temptations he endures in Jesus, sacrificing for you and me. And then you enter the passion. After you get out of John 17 into 18, there is the agony of the beatings, the mocking, the public humiliation, the being stripped naked, the brutal death on the cross. It is one massive act of self-sacrifice for the good of another. It's not for him. I love that we get the account of Jesus in Gethsemane saying, if there's any other way, I don't love this. There's any other way, Father, but not yours, but mine. Not mine, but yours. Love for the other person. Love is willing self-sacrifice for the good of another, and this is important, that does not require reciprocation. See how Jesus just really takes away ability to put caveats on love. Romans 5:8 says that while we were his enemies, Christ died for us. If Jesus had waited until you were able to reciprocate, there would be no hope for you or for me. I was his enemy. He's God, by the way. Okay? It's going to be hard to get into he's never in my debt. But man, if love required reciprocation, I couldn't do it. So, and again, if love requires reciprocation, then it isn't love. You know what it is? Getting what you want by playing the long game. Because the whole goal is to get something from you. By the way, quick caveat, I think this is really important. Love does not require reciprocation. Trust does require reciprocation. If you're in abusive relationships, you're dealing with an adulterous spouse, someone you love who's an addict, who's taken advantage of you again and again, you are called to love those people. You are not necessarily called to trust those people again. So if you have questions on that, again, Chris and Meryl can talk to you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about trust. I'm talking about love. Love is willing self-sacrifice for the good of another that does not require reciprocation or that the person is deserving. I don't want to go, man, I'll love anyone that's nice to me, that deserves it. Jesus was willing to go to the cross and carry our sin precisely because there was nothing we could do to ever earn, achieve, or deserve the love of God. If you're interested only in loving people who are deserving, the reality is that you are not motivated by love for them, but by love for yourself. There's an author named Paul Miller, I quote him often tonight, love does its best work when the other person is undeserving. It's in these moments that love is most needed. It's in these moments that love is protective and preventative. It stays the course while refusing to quit or to get down and get dirty and give way to things that are anything but love. Okay, so we've discussed what love isn't, what love is, and now my third and final point is, what does love look like? How do we love practically? Okay, we don't have that practical component, right? But you guys good? You guys good, by the way? Feeling it? All right, good? 15 more minutes? You sure? All right. How do we love practically? Now I'm just going to tell you a bunch of stories and make my church look awesome. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's a couple things. It's serving. Jesus served us on the cross and in his life and in his death and in his resurrection. It's staying up late while someone pours their heart out. They have a breakup. They have a death, whatever it is. It's fixing up someone's house. It's babysitting. We have a rule at our church. You're not allowed to hire a mover. You're not allowed to hire, well, now you got to hire babysitters, I guess. But you can't hire movers, and you can't charge for babysitting, okay? Basically where we're at. I know you guys will lose your mind on that. But we said if we're a family, we're here to love one another. And we do that. Also, for a family, you can say no. It could be visiting someone in the hospital. It could be running errands for someone in an insane season of life. I want to say this. Some of you need to let some people serve you. So some of you legitimately, your pace, it's not realistic right now. Like right now, Dana is feeling sick, about to have a baby. She's like, man, I want to build a house for some people in Mexico tomorrow. Dana, I would love you. It's not the right time for that, right? Just, I promise. It's going to get rough. You're not going to like it. It'll just not be good, okay? There are times in life where we need to be served, but if you're always the one being served, you should go, man, am I really loving people? Also, if you're the one that's always serving, now sometimes you go, man, you need people, sometimes you need to ask for that help. Because there's going to be times when I need service, there's times you're going to need service. We both will. Love requires giving. Jesus gave up everything on the cross for us. 1 John 3:16-18. It says, 1 John 3:16-18, it says, by this we know love, that he laid down his life for us. We ought to lay down our life for our brothers and sisters. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother or sister in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and truth. It's giving. It's letting someone stay with you. It's giving someone your car. I've been given 2 cars. And I was given a car once, and we were getting ready to plant the church, and a guy came to me at the church I was at, and he came up to me during a worship set, and he knew we were about to have a second baby. We quit our job to church plant. We were scared. We were raising funds. It was terrifying. And the guy walked up to me, and he said, man, I want to give you our car. It's got 50,000 miles. I think it'll work for you. Still the car we have to this day. And I said, thank you so much. He said, don't thank me. I didn't want to give it to you. God told me to. It could be letting someone borrow your car. It could be letting someone live with you. There's a space to charge rent and let someone live with you, but there's also a space when someone can't afford it. You go, man, if you're my brother or my sister, if you're my brother or sister, I'm going to hold you accountable to get a job. but also I'm going to help you get through this time. You're not sleeping on the street. I'm going to just pray for you and walk away. It's going to be real. We walked into this in a big, big way at our church. Some of you guys might have heard this story at one of the conferences we did, but about 2 years ago now, I was called over to my friend's house. There's a couple in our church. I love them deeply, and I was called over to their house, and my wife the gal who's the wife, she's 8.5 months pregnant. She just said, hey, can you come over? Something's wrong with my husband. I don't know what's going on. And I came over, and I got to the house, and my buddy was on the floor, and he curled up in a ball, sobbing. And he was saying things that were incoherent. They were nonsensical. But it was clear to me that he was afraid and confused, and he was not himself. He was talking about 9,000 miles a minute, and we found out later that our friend had gone into a manic episode. He was bipolar. He'd been off his meds. His dad had died, and it sent him into an episode. And this is about a month before his baby is due. So the nursery's been decorated. I mean, they're in that phase. It's like right now, Stu and Dana. And in our church, and I talked to Chris and Maria, our life was out of control. Their life was out of control. Their life spun out of control. Our friend was acting erratic. He needed to get help. By the way, it's all public now. They've talked about it publicly. We took him to hospitals. They wouldn't take him in. Also being manic, he didn't think he needed help. So even though he was acting psychotic and terrifying his wife, we couldn't convince him to get help. And in America, it is very hard. We really value, civil liberty, all that stuff. It's hard to get someone that doesn't want to go in unless they hurt someone. We don't want to wait for that to happen. And so it's terrifying. You're like, dude, I don't want him to hurt himself or someone else. But also, he's not all there. And eventually, he hit someone. He was 51-50'd, and he was in a mental hospital the day his son was born. And when that happens, the cool thing is his wife wasn't there by herself. I guess you got her discipleship band leader was sitting next to her, coaching her through the delivery, her small group leader. And she was serving her in a way her husband couldn't at the time. Her husband would love to, by the way. He's an amazing dad right now. It's amazing. But he literally couldn't be there. And so it was there. And because he was so unstable during his manic episode, and because we couldn't make him get help, his wife made the really hard decision to get a restraining order. And so during all that time, we got her a place to stay. People in our church stepped up. People were going over there. Multiple people a day were going over to see him at their house to try to convince him to take his meds, to go see a doctor, to go to the hospital. People bring over multiple meals a day to him, to her. They had a condo, and the condo was destroyed. The walls were torn up. He had spray painted it. Literally, guys, he was literally psychotic. And there was times where all that could get through to him was our presence being there with him. He trusted us. He wasn't there, but he trusted us. And eventually, he would accidentally cause a lot of property damage due to an accident that never would have happened if he was in his right mind. He flooded the condo complex he lived in. He was taken to jail, county mental hospital, and during that time, people were constantly checking in, crying with her, talking to him, praying for his wife. We hosted prayer meetings, 30, 40 people. And on the back end of this, over time, a gal in our church stepped up to help renovate the condo that had been destroyed. Another guy with commercial real estate experience jumped in to help deal with the insurance claims. Someone else paid for him to get to a treatment center out of state. Someone from the church bought his flight, flew with him, and the whole time they're with his wife and that baby. And again, if we're family, this makes sense. It made our lives very complicated, you guys. It required probably 8 of us. I'm not exaggerating, 5 to 8 people a day, either helping her or trying to literally go over and see if he's okay. I just can't tell you how weighty it was, how scary it was. There was so little we could do watching someone we loved in this space. And so anyways, he went over there, and literally we had meals for 2 months brought to her. I mean, it was amazing to see the way the church did. And it wasn't just me as a pastor. It was the whole church. We're owning this. We're taking it. And on the back end of that, again, I had mentioned this earlier, but she had gotten a restraining order when he was manic. She was afraid. She was worried about their business, all this stuff. And because of that, when he got back, he found out that they couldn't lift the restraining order. So now he's in his right mind. All that he's been through, all that she has been through. And here's the deal with restraining orders. This is a good thing, but typically when you get them, because you're worried about your significant other, a lot of times women who are in a tough spot, they are being abused. which wasn't the case here, but when they are being abused, they'll have a moment of clarity, they'll get help, they'll reach out to get the order, and then the guy comes back around, hey, I love you, they manipulate him, and then they go back. So a lot of times it's a good rule, the judge will go, hey, even if you want to lift it, we're not going to, for your benefit. And so that's what happened here, and so you think, but now you think about this situation, it's not that. And so this guy's he hasn't been around for months. He hasn't been there with his baby. All he wants to do is be with his baby and his wife. He's finally in his right mind. So much is going well. He's on medication. People are there. And he literally can't be in the same room with them on paper. Just think about, man. And so the church is there. We had to do they could come to the same church we found out, but they couldn't talk. And so they kind of, give sneaky winks. And we want them to be together. And so they went to court and they sat with the judge. And the judge basically just said, hey, there's no precedent for me to lift this restraining order a month and a half in. There isn't. And so in a month, I'll see you. It was going to be a month away. And in a month, we'll see where it's at. You'll have to do some stuff, and we'll see. And we were just really nervous. They basically found out from a lawyer, if it didn't go well, it'd be another probably 60 days before they could reverse the order. Just think about how weighty this is, guys. And for a family that had been through so much, that sounded awful. And that morning, we went, and there was 10 to 15 of us that went to, so there was a makeup restraining order hearing, and this guy just said, hey guys, can you guys come? Can any of you come? It would be a good show of his character if people show up, supporting us. And so we went, and again, we get there, and we're sitting down, and they can't even talk at the beginning, and they're different sections. And all they want to do is want to be together, to go to court to just be with your wife. And the judge, he just looks in. He's like, dude, I've never seen a group of supporters here for a restraining order lifting. I don't know what's going on. You guys have really good friends. And the judge just looked at him and said, just straight away, it was crazy. And again, we didn't know. And she said, Mr. Smith, I no longer believe you're a danger to Mrs. Smith. I believe it was an unusual case, that it wasn't tied to abuse, but to mental health. And I'm lifting the restraining order effective immediately. And as far as our crew is concerned, man, it was like we had won the lottery. We were cheering, they were like, hey, gotta be quiet, in court. It's all right, I want to go to jail or anything. We're cheering, we're screaming. We went outside. I still have the picture. I looked at it the other day, just randomly. I just started crying looking at the picture. And they went out, they embraced, and I honestly don't think I've been happier. I know when I was married, I was probably happier. I know at the birth of our kids, I was happier. But how I felt in that moment, it was like we had won the Super Bowl, man. It was just the coolest thing in the world. And it was a lot of people giving of themselves to this couple. And they've been through so much. They lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't even tell you guys everything that happened. But throughout the way, she recently told her church, she said, I felt like you guys were like armor that God had put on my body. You guys were the protection I needed. You guys were all the different, I didn't even know all the tools I needed yet. But God had put that toolkit into my life that was there when we needed it. And guys, that is a messy story. It's a crazy story. It's on the other side now. It's coming up. It's not perfect, but it's getting a lot better. He's a great dad. He's a great husband. He is present. She is growing in Jesus. She led worship this morning at our church. It's really, really cool what's happening. He was on stage playing guitar the other day and almost lost it. It's really, really cool, but it was really messy. Yeah. Love is not just a feeling. He literally couldn't reciprocate. He wasn't in his right mind. But it reflected the cross. It's giving. Love is listening. It's, again, we see this throughout the Gospels with Jesus. There's a book I think every Christian should read. You should just read it. I think it's the fifth Gospel. It's called Love Walked Among Us by a guy named Paul Miller. All jokes aside, it's not the fifth Gospel, but it's really, really good. It's just a study of the life of Jesus through the Gospels, how he loved people. Love Walked Among Us by Paul Miller. And he has a whole chapter on just how Jesus saw people. He says, before you can love someone, you have to see them. Before you can do something for them, you have to see them. And he says, to not see them and just do things isn't love, but to see them and not do anything. He says, you have to see them and then move to action. And it's a sacrifice to listen to people, but as you listen to them, you're able to love them. I've got a guy who lives across the street from me right now. We just got a house, and he's 80. He's 79 or 80. His name's Wes, and he's a widower. And we were at a backyard barbecue the other day, and he said, this neighborhood used to be so quiet. I was like, oh no, we're those people. I'm like, we have church. And he said, and it's so nice to finally have kids and families and people. I was like, yes, this is crazy. And he said, what makes my heart leap every day, Andy, is when Olivia, your daughter, sees. She says, Wes, 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 and she sees me. So my granddaughter is 18 now. I don't have those moments in the same way. I love them, but they're not around often. And so many times he started to pour and share things about his life. You know how many people think no one wants to listen to me? Just listening, you guys. I'm not talking about, I have this with my wife sometimes. There are moments where she'll say, you're not listening to me. And I'll say, I can repeat it right back to you. And I do. And she said, I'm not asking if you heard me, Andy. I'm asking, are you listening to me? And here's the thing with listening. It's not listening if they don't feel listened to. Meryl could teach you all about this, I'm sure. She's one of the best listeners in the game. Right? You know time when you talk to Meryl, you're like, oh, she's taking this in. She loves me. The other day I got an Uber. We only have one car, and now with our new house, we're trying to figure out what to do because I live further away now. I used to be able to walk to work. And I got a ride, there was this girl named Dana, and I got in her car. She's probably like 30, maybe 28, 30, I don't know. And she just said, hey, what do you do for fun? And I don't typically like to, I hate small talk. I'm not the guy who shows the gospel on the plane. I hate small talk. Like, if they force me, I'll do it, like, tell me about Jesus. I'm like, okay, let's do it. But I'm not, right? I'm not that guy. Uber drives especially, like, I'm not that guy. And I was sitting there, and she said, hey, what do you do for fun? I said, me and my wife, like, we like to have parties, have cocktail parties, we have hangouts, like, hang out with my family, friend, food. And I'm, part of a church, da-da-da. And then, and I was like, she asked, I was like, hey, what do you do for fun? And she said, well, I actually don't know anymore because I spent every waking second pretty much with my boyfriend, and he broke up with me yesterday. And I found out he was cheating on me. And those moments where I was like, do you want to share more? Like, it felt like you already give me a lot, but I didn't know, And I was like, hey, I was like, hey, I'm also a pastor, I don't know. She's like, wow, you're really into the church. You were right, you mentioned church earlier. And I was like, do you want to share more? She's like, yeah, it's great. It's like, you're paying me to do therapy for me. So I was like, cool, all right. And I'm not licensed, I'm not licensed. I said, but I'll listen. And so she started to share, and we're talking, and I was just hearing, she said, man, my dad died in the last year. Now this happened. She said, how do you deal with this the right way? I said, well, you got to grieve it. She's like, I'm over grieving. My dad died. I've got this thing. Like, I'm over grieving. And I said, hey, like, can I just pray for you? Would that be okay? And she goes, that would be, whoa. She said, actually, yesterday I prayed for the first time in my life. Like, I don't even know if I believe in God, but I prayed. She's like, I'm from Jordan. I grew up Muslim. Now I do yoga. It's like the funny thing people in North Park will say. I grew up this, but now I do yoga. And it's like, it's not a religion, but it's fine. And she pulled the car over, and I prayed a basic prayer. I didn't lay hands on her. That'd be weird and creepy for the situation, for sure. And I said, hey, and I just prayed basic prayers that God sees her, that he knows her, that he's drawing her to himself, that he's pursuing her, that he knit her together in her mother's womb, that he will meet her in her loss, that he's near to the brokenhearted, to those who are crushed in spirit. And she starts convulsively crying, you guys. Like, I can't even, and I go, hey, I hope that was okay. And she's like, you don't understand. This was a miracle. I was like, she said, this might be normal. You're a pastor or whatever. She's like, I don't even know if I believe in God. And I prayed 20 minutes ago that God would send someone to pray for me. And this happened. And I just can't handle it. And this is wonderful. I was like, well. And then I was like, oh, man, I don't know what to do. Talking about Jesus. And I was like, hey, like, if you want to follow up, like, I'll give you my number. And if you want to text me, I've connected to some counselors and all stuff. And if you ever want to get connected to the church. And she said, cool, I'm going to put you on my phone as Praying Andy. I'm so excited. And I was like, cool. And then like a week, guys, and then we had our small group, and we prayed for her. And she, I've really lost the plot, dude. I'm going to be done in 5 minutes. I'm sorry, Chris. But I listened. What's crazy is about a week later, there's nothing. I was telling people, man, pray for this girl. Oh, man, who's this going to happen? And nothing happened. And I was like, dude, it's on God because da-da-da. So like a week goes by, and then I'm getting ready to go to work, and I call an Uber, and it's her. She's going to pick me up, dude. And I've gotten I probably have 1,000 rides. I probably have 3 times ever I've had the same driver. I'm like, dude, this is insane. So I get in. Jackie saw. She started clapping. She's like, oh, my gosh, I was supposed to call you the last 2 days. I knew I was supposed to. Oh, my gosh. I wasn't even supposed to do this drive. I live in Hillcrest way over there. Like, this is crazy. Like, she's, like, crying again. She's like, oh, my gosh. And I told her I'm connected to this counselor. I'm actually going to meet with her right now. Do you want to meet her? She's like, let's go. I'll meet her. Like, and she goes in, starts sharing her story. This whole thing's happening. It works for our church. It's just wild, guys. But it all started with just me listening. And I'm not that guy. Again, I might sound like a hero. 99.9% of the time, my Uber ride is, what's up, man? Headphones. But just to listen, what God will do. Yeah. And actually, what's even worse than people out there feeling like no one has listens to them, you have people in your small group who never talk. And sometimes they're like, whatever, they're introverts and whatnot. But a lot of people think, I don't talk because I've been taught my whole life that what I say doesn't matter. So that's why they're quiet. And actually, if you just say, hey, I would love to know what you think. That's so many times people go, me? Like, why would you care what I think? Because I love you, and Jesus loves you, and you're here for a reason. And you even have gifts to give to this. You have wisdom and gifts, and you have the Holy Spirit. Yeah. It's huge. It's listening, it's serving, it's giving. I'll give 2 quick ones. It's speaking truth to people, not about people, and not avoiding people. Again, it's so easy, right? I love like an Irish goodbye, like all right, I'm going to get out of here, right? When it's awkward, it's kind of slowly, awkward turtle, get into your shell, pull back. But actually to go towards people and say, hey, I love you, but what I think you're doing is wrong. This is where gossip often starts in churches, right? I'm so worried about this person, right? I'm really worried about Jim. I haven't told Jim. We should all just pray for Jim right now. Did you guys hear about Jim? He's got some wild stuff going on. Might be an addict. Worried about Jim. What do you guys think? He could be? Yeah. Let's go, right? And it's fun. It's funny as a story, but it's heartbreaking as a community, as a church. And then Jim, you finally hit up Jim. He's like, you guys all are judging me and you hate me and I can't even hear what you're saying. So huge. It's doing conflict well, guys. It's my last story for real. Last story. But a friend of ours, and they actually said we could share this story. I've shared it at our church. But about a year ago, we had 2 guys. If you guys have Bibles, turn real fast to Philippians. In Philippians chapter 4, the Apostle Paul's writing the book of Philippians about people who are planning a church in Philippi. They're getting after it. It's hard. And he's saying, man, have joy. Even though it's hard. I'm in prison. It's hard, but it's worth it. Jesus is worth it. And he's pressing them. And then he says this. He says, Philippians 4:1, says, therefore, my brothers and sisters, whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm thus in the Lord, my beloved. Verse 2, he says, I entreat Euodia and I entreat Syntyche to agree in the Lord. Yes, I ask you also, true companion, help these women, who have labored side by side with me in the gospel, together with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. So Paul, he's apostolic leader, he's planting churches. He has these 2 women. Paul empowered women. He didn't hate on them. He empowered women. And he had women on his ministry team and people like Lydia and Priscilla and Euodia and Syntyche. And so apparently Euodia and Syntyche were beefing, okay? Now, this is bad for Paul because sorry, Tyler, this thing's just popped off. All right, there we go. Good. I think it's good. They're beefing. Paul's like, I love both you guys, right? Like, I don't want a winner. Good pastors are like good dads. Like, when my kids fight, I'm not like, man, I want Clive to win this one. I'm like, I want you to agree and love each other. It's beautiful. The Old Testament says it's beautiful when that happens. And so Paul has this moment, and I had a moment and he says, he's begging the church, help them agree with one another, help them love one another. And I had a moment, 2 of these gals in my church. One of them is really intense. She's very extroverted. She gets stuff done. She is type A, and she can be hard to be around when she's in a bad spot and she's unaware. She'd even say that. She knows that about herself. The other person, a little timid, always nervous to speak up. And so what happened was this girl had offended. She was pretty difficult to be around. This girl, instead of talking to her, gossiped about it. Now, I sit down in this meeting with another gal at our church, another leader, and the 2 of them, and we're trying to entreat them. I have a Euodia Syntyche situation on my hand. And these gals both have done a lot with me in ministry. They're not like random women who are just, like they're like, I want, same thing as Paul. And we sit with them. And one of my fears is, if this gal apologizes for being mean and intense and short and selfish at times, but this girl doesn't admit to gossiping because she knows about the gossip, but I don't know that she knows about the gossip, it's going to feel really incomplete as a reconciliation. Does that make sense? Like, I apologize back. I know she's, and so I'm like, man, how do I do this? I want to force it. And we sit there, and it was just so beautiful, guys. Like, she opens up, and she realizes, man, I'm so sorry. I'm this way, da-da-da. And then she goes, hey, I just want to tell you, I've been gossiping about you, unasked for. And I just want you to know, I'm going to go also confess this to the women I apologize to. I'm going to apologize to them for doing this, and it's full stuff I didn't even ask for. She's doing. And what I love about the story is they're both still leaders in our church. They actually lead a ministry together right now. It's just the 2 of them. And again, you might go, what? Again, it's kind of a lame, random story. No. In a lot of churches, you don't do that. This person leaves, right? She was mean to me. I'm out of here. Got like a first grade approach to conflict. No. Conflict can be a gateway to deeper intimacy because we've been through something together. It's a deeper relationship. But so many people, the minute it gets hard, you run. Don't run. Dive in, talk about it. Move toward each other in love. And then that's the last one, bearing with and forgiving people. Colossians 3:12-16 says this. I'll hand over to Chris, but I just want to say this. He says, put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another. I love that Paul has bearing with one another in here, right? Because we're like, oh, people are going to sin against you, you need to forgive them. Also, he assumes that people at church are going to get on your nerves. Bear with, right? And it's kind of funny because here's what's crazy is we all think, right? Like we have to bear with people. You're someone's bear too. You get on someone, you might not know it, like you're their bear. You're a grizzly for them. He goes, no, I know they're louder than you want them to be. Love them. They're quiet and kind of mousy, makes you feel awkward. You're like, what are you thinking? Love them. This guy thinks on time's 20 minutes late, not 30. Love him. Challenge him, but love him. This person thinks on time's 5 minutes early, and she's mean to everyone who's not 5 minutes early. Love. You see what I'm saying? We're called to bear with one another. And if one has a complaint against each other, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Last thing. Do you see how all these different ways of loving are supernatural? Do you see how, you know how many people can't do conflict in our world? Yeah. Do you know how many people have never, like, guys, we can be generous with our words, we can be generous with our actions, we can be generous with our homes, and the world will take notice. Man, they do, see how they love one another. That's the mark on them, like Tertullian would say. They love one another. I think they believe crazy things about a guy Star Trekking into the sky, but I can't argue with their love. And actually, I'm interested in that guy, by the way that they love one another. And so will you step into your calling as Genesis Costa Mesa? And I don't care what job you have, what year of school you're in, what your faith, you can do this. You're going to have to learn to do it, but you can do it. Oh, Chris. Woo!